Your next reading is basics of derivative pricing and valuation. A quick overview. It's quite an extended reading. These are the LOSs, and let's start with the first OLS. Explain how the concept of arbitrage, replication, and risk neutrality are used in pricing derivatives. First of all, what is an arbitrage? What is arbitrage? Arbitrage exists when equivalent assets or combination of assets sell for two different prices in two different markets. So what you will do, let's say this is market A, this is market B. A certain asset is priced at $100 in market A and at $105 in market B, assuming there is no transaction cost, let's say. You can purchase this asset from market A and sell it in market B, thereby generating a gain of $5, riskless gain. So if the same asset traded at a higher price in one place and a lower price in another, then market participants would sell the higher price asset by buying the lower, and in doing so earn a riskless profit. This is what you call arbitrage. Next, replication. Replication basically refers to the creation of an asset or a portfolio of assets by using a combination of other assets, other portfolios, and a derivative. So the combination so produced will have the equivalent single unit. Right. For example, you hold an asset for $100 and you agree to sell this asset at 110 in the future. So you sell a forward contract, thereby you sell a forward contract, and this is what you call the short derivative. It has a price of $10. So either you can do this, or you can simply take your $100 and invest at 10% risk-free to generate $110. So either you hold the asset, you sell a forward contract which will give you 110, or alternatively you can go in a riskless way. You can invest $100 10%, so you generate 110. And we are assuming there is no storage cost at the moment, at least. So in this case, you can see, since the payoffs are identical, then the present values of these two must be identical as well. This is called replication. Let us extend this idea. So these combinations will produce an equivalent asset. You are long an asset, you have the asset, you sell a forward contract, short derivative, it will result in a long risk-free asset, just like in the previous example. Now, if you just swap things around, like for example, the long risk-free asset, if brought to this side, it will become a short risk-free asset. Now the new arrangement would be, and this short derivative will become a long derivative. So a long asset plus a short risk-free asset will give you a long derivative. And if you just swap these, long derivative will become a short derivative and long asset will become a short asset. So a combination of short derivative plus short risk-free asset would result in a short asset. We'll just explain these as we go along. It's just an idea that you need to keep in mind, that they can be just swapped around here and there, and it will result in equivalent single assets. This is what you call replication. This is just an idea. This will be further elaborated as we go along. So right here, this will help us explain the concept what you call the risk neutrality. So this risk neutrality, sometimes also called the risk neutral derivative pricing, it uses the fact that the arbitrage opportunities guarantee that a risk-free portfolio consisting of the asset and a derivative must earn the risk-free rate that we discussed in the previous example. So basically it means that there is only one derivative price that meets this condition. Any mispricing of the derivative will lead to arbitrage transactions, and that drive the derivative price back to where it should be. That's the law of one price. Next LOS is distinguish between value and price of forward and future contract. First of all, we need to differentiate between value versus price. At the start or at inception, a forward contract we discussed in our previous reading, or a future contract, they will have a zero value because there is no down payment needed. Investors are willing to take the contract or sign off a contract for $0. So the value of future and forward at the beginning, they are zero. But when we say price, the price of a forward or a future contract at inception is agreed upon, also called the contractual price, and this price remains fixed till the maturity of the contract. So now the value of the forward and future is zero at inception. The price of forward and future, it is fixed at inception till maturity of the contract. Then the value, it varies over the period. The value of the forward and future, it changes as, let me show you graphically here. The value is zero, price of the future and forwards. But in the maturity, the future spot and the forward, it tend to converge. So here between 0 and the maturity, the value of the forward or future is not 0. The forward value begins towards the maturity and tends towards the forward price as the contract approaches maturity. We will learn how do we calculate the price of the forward contract in our next LOS. Your next LOS is calculate a forward price of an asset with zero, positive or negative net cost to carry. When you hold an asset, you gain some benefit from it, perhaps in dividends, interest, and when you hold an asset, it will also involve some cost. So the net of benefit and cost is what you call the net cost. So net cost can be zero if the cost of holding the asset is equal to the benefits cost. This is benefit, zero. It could be positive when the benefit is more, cost is less, and it could be negative. Negative cost means when the cost is more and benefit is less, right? So how do we calculate the forward price of a contract or a forward price of an asset? Spot compounded at risk-free rate, raised to the power, periods in compounding. So spot compounded, then the net cost, which could be zero, positive or negative, compounded as well till the period T. This can be rearranged into splitting this benefit and cost and then writing all these spot, benefit, cost compounded to T period. So this is how we calculate the forward price. Just you need to understand the formula. There are questions in your end of chapter questions in curriculum. They will be discussed in your second video after this. Your next LOS is explain how the value and price of a forward contract are determined at expiration, during the life of the contract, and at initiation. Let us denote the value at time T as Vt, the value of the price at time T as F naught T. Now at initiation, as I said, the value would be 0, but the forward price would be equal to spot compounded at risk-free rate raised to the power T. So basically forward price is simply the spot price of the underlying compounded at rate R for T periods. Then during the contract's life, value would start increasing. The value equals the spot at that point in time minus present value of the forward price. Please note here, T is the expiration and this small t is the time that has elapsed. So this negative sign indicates that this is the present value is being calculated. So the value equals the spot price at that time T less the present value of the forward price at this point. And then finally at maturity, the value equals the spot price of the underlying asset minus the forward price. Okay, so let us draw more sense out of it by doing an example. Let's take an example. Suppose a bakery will purchase 100 pounds of flour in exactly 1 year time Now the bakery is exposed to commodity price risk and wants to hedge by locking in a buying price now. So the bakery enters into a forward contract. Now here is the relevant detail. Spot price of flour, let's say it's $5 per pound. Time is 1 year. The interest rate, let's say 6%. Now let us first calculate the forward price at this point in time, at initiation. Value is 0 as we have agreed. So how do we calculate the forward price? Forward price is equal to the current spot compounded raised to the power 1. So it's going to be $5.30. So the bakery agrees to buy 100 pounds of flour for a total of $530. So the value of the forward contract here is 0 as we agreed. Now let us see the scenario 1. 9 months after the contract is entered, the spot price ST is now 4.9. Now let us calculate the value of the contract now. The value of the contract would be equal to the spot, just I'm using the previous formulas, I hope you would have noted them down, 4.9 minus the forward discounted. Discounted by what extent? Remember it was 1 plus R negative T minus small t. So if you just plug in the numbers, 1.06 negative 1, 9 months mean 0.75, so which means you will have negative 0.25. So remember, the value of the forward future at the beginning is 0, but as the time progresses and the price is fixed, remember, and then value changes. So this is how we are determining the value. So if you calculate and simplify this, it should give you negative 0.323. See, because the price has fallen over the period from 5 to 4.9, so this forward contract is not beneficial for the bakery. So if the bakery wants to get out of this contract, so they will have to pay for 100 pounds, they have to pay $32.30. So this is the scenario 1. What about scenario 2? 9 months after the contract is entered, the spot price is 5.5, but you have locked yourself in the price 5.3. So now the price is high, but you will be paying 5.3. So now the forward contract will have a positive value. Let us calculate that. The spot after 9 months, that is 5.5, minus forward price, that is already agreed to, 1.06 raised to the power negative 0.25. Now if you simplify, you will get 0.277, which means now the contract has, this forward contract has a value of 2.7 times 100. That is a 0.277 times 100 is 27.7. So this is the profit on this contract. At maturity, when the contract matures, let's say the final price at that point is $6, the spot, final spot is $6, but your contract has a forward price of 5.3, so you make a gain of 0.7. For 100 pounds, your gain is going to be $70. So this is how the value of the forward contract is determined at expiration. Comparison between, let me take you back, comparison between the spot at that time and the forward contract. During the contract, there is the spot during the time and the forward discounted at till that time versus the initiation. I think all the numbers are there to support the assertion. So that's how the value of and price of forward contracts are determined at expiration, during the contract, and at inception. Next, LOS is describe monetary and non-monetary benefits of cost associated with holding the underlying asset and explain how they affect the value and the price of the forward contract. In the previous slide, we discussed the price of an asset, the forward price of an asset, with certain benefits and costs is the spot price compounded at risk-free rate over the life of the contract minus the future value of those benefits. Let me show you what did we do. This is right here, this one. Let me repeat, what did I say? I said the forward price of an asset with benefits and cost is the spot price compounded over the life of the contract with risk-free rate minus the future value of net cost or net benefit compounded at risk-free rate over the life of the contract. So this basically is the description of the formula I'm just narrating. Okay, moving on, what we were doing. So forward price, as I said, includes some cost. What are the costs we need to discuss now? Usually the cost associated with the physical asset involves the holding cost like warehousing, rent, insurance, pilferage, deterioration. When you hold an asset in your warehouse, there are certain costs. Insurance, you have to pay custodial cost, you may have to pay rent, you may have to pay, you may incur loss of deterioration with the passage of time, obsolescence, pilferage. So many costs involved relating to storage. And there are certain benefits as well. The benefits refers to monetary benefits associated with holding the underlying asset. Like for example, if you're holding bonds, you will earn interest. If you're holding shares, you will receive dividends. As well as what you call the convenience yield. What is convenience yield? Convenience yield is the benefit that comes with holding the physical asset rather than holding a contract. So this is what we have already discussed in our previous LOS. Remember, from here you can see the costs. Look at this. It's a plus. Theta is the cost. The cost is plus, so it would increase the forward price. Costs increase the forward price. They are added, while the benefits, they reduce the forward price, as you can see from this formula. Okay, moving on forward, what is the forward contract? That's your next LOS. Define forward rate agreement and describe its uses. What is a forward rate agreement? It's an agreement to exchange an interest rate commitment on a notional amount. Typically, it involves two parties. They exchange fixed interest rate for a variable one. Two parties fixed rate for a variable one. So the party paying the fixed rate is referred to as the borrower. Remember, the party that is paying the fixed rate is referred to as the borrower, while the party paying the variable rate is referred to as the lender. Right? So here the borrower or the buyer of the forward rate agreement enters into a contract to protect itself from future increase in interest rates, whereas the seller of the forward rate agreement wants to protect itself from a future decline in interest rates. So remember, these forward rate agreements are OTC products, not traded on exchange, because they're highly customized, agreed between the parties to the contract. Explain why forward and futures prices differ. Why do forward prices and future prices differ? These are the reason. First, forwards are OTC instruments that we've just agreed. Two parties agree, they may agree to any terms of conditions between them, whereas the futures are exchange traded. So as a result, forwards are riskier than the future contracts. Why? Because there are two parties, no regulator, no exchanges involved, so there is high counterparty risk, whereas there is no counterparty risk in the future market. Forwards have high counterparty risk, particularly because parties have just entered into a contract, so any of the parties may renege against the contract, because any gain and loss will have to be paid or received at the expiration of the contract, whereas in the future we use what you call mark to market. Future price have very little counterparty risk because the counterparty is the exchange itself, and there is daily marking to market, means any gain and loss is charged or credited to the parties respectively. Next, we have explained how swap contracts are similar to but different from the series of forward contracts. But before that, we need to understand what's our swaps. Let's say swap may involve interest rate swap, it involve currency swaps, so on and so forth. So swap is a contractual agreement to exchange net cash flows for a specified pay leg and receive leg. For example, if the net off is, let's say I have to receive $100 from you under the swap agreement, and I have to pay maybe $90 to you. So in other words, I will simply receive $10 from you. That's what you mean the net cash flow for a specified pay leg and receive leg. So what are swaps? Is a contractual agreement to exchange net cash flows for a specified pay leg or receive leg, each of which may either be fixed or variable. We'll discuss as we go along. So this was what was needed for this LOS. Explain how swap contracts are similar to but different from a series of forward contracts. As you can see, all the forward has only a single payment at maturity. As you can see, we agree at time t to exchange at time t plus 6 months. Swap typically involves a series of payments in the future. So this is a forward contract which is similar to a single period swap, agreement at time t, exchange at time t plus 6. So a forward contract is similar to a single period swap, but when there are many swaps, it will be many forward contracts, like agreement to swap at t plus 6, exchange cash flows, exchange at t plus 12, and so on and so forth. So a single period swap basically is equivalent to a forward contract, and a multi-period swap basically is a combination of more than one forward contracts. Alright, moving on to what we were doing, already discussed swaps. So swap pricing, how do we value swaps? Swap valuation, swap pricing. Swap pricing is the determination of the initial term of the swap at inception of the contract. And as I said that previously, just like in futures and forwards, the initial value is 0, and in inception the value of interest rate swap is also 0. So swap valuation is the determination of the market value during the life of the swap. And how do we do that? The value of the swap is the present value of cash flows. Like you have pay floating, receive fixed, so the value of the swap would be the present value of fixed minus present value of floating. And if you have pay fixed, receive floating, the value of the swap would be present value of floating minus present value of fixed. Then your next LOS is explain the exercise value, time value, and moneyness of an option. Okay, let us first do some notations. CT here is the price of European call option. Price of European call option at expiration. ST here is the price of the underlying at time t. X here is the exercise price, sometimes also called the strike price. And PT here is the price of a European put option. Remember, C is for call and P is for put. This is call, this is put. Alright, the question is, how do we value a European call option or put option? So in case of a call, the value of call option is the greater of 0, or the difference between the price of the underlying versus the exercise price. Higher of these two, 0 versus ST minus X, whichever is higher is the gain. And in case of a put option, it's greater of 0, X minus ST. What does it mean? In case of a put option, the greater of either 0 or the difference between the exercise price and the price of the underlying expiration. We have done many questions. We will do many questions in your EOC, so they will explain the formula. We just need to learn how the gain is determined. Let us take some numbers to explain the idea. Okay, let's take some numbers here. Let's say the stock price at expiration is 100. Exercise price of call option is 90. So 100 less 90, 10 versus 0, whichever is greater, 10. So the value of the call option would be 10. Right? Take another example. The stock price at expiration is 100. The exercise price of the call is 115. In that case, there is negative 15 and 0, whichever is greater, 0. So in that case, the value of the call option is 0. It is out of money. And let's say take in the case of put option, stock price at expiration, let's say it is 44. Exercise price is 40. So 40 minus 44, negative 4 versus 0, the greater is 0. So in this case, the value of the put option is 0. And let's say if the stock price is 44, exercise price is 50, in that case, greater of 0 and these two, which net of these, that is 6. 6 would be greater number. So in this case, the value of put option is 6. So it's pretty straightforward. You don't need to even use this. You can just use your common sense, common logic. You can still get the correct number. So here I didn't spend much time in explaining what is exercise value because we have already discussed in our previous reading related to derivatives. So just a quick overview. The exercise price here is the value of a European option at expiration. Just we calculated it comparing the 0 and with these. So that was basically the exercise value. Should we or should we not? In case of 0, we shouldn't. In case if it's positive, then we should. So remember, greater the length of time until expiration, it provides further opportunity for the underlying to move in a favorable direction for the option holders. If there is more time available for expiration, the value of call and put option will be higher. And regarding moneyness of an option, let us discuss some cases here, explain the idea. The moneyness, basically the moneyness of an option is dependent on where the underlying price is relative to the exercise price. So basically all the interplay between the price of the underlying and the exercise price. Let me explain this to you in the next slide. Okay, let us first discuss the call option in 3 different situations: at the money, in the money, and out of money. Let's say if you have a call option that gives you the right to purchase an asset at $50, an asset happens to be in the market for $50, it means the call option is at the money, right? If you hold the call option that gives you the right to purchase an asset at $50, whereas the market price is, let's say $60, in this case, we say the call option is in the money because the exercise price or strike price is less than the stock price. So you will definitely exercise the option. But in this case, the call option that gives you the right to buy at $50, an asset that is currently trading at $35, in this case, you don't need to exercise the call option. It is worthless because the option is out of money. Now let us do this for put. At the money, in the money, and out the money. I'm sure you remember put option gives you the right to sell. Let's say the right to sell is $70. And at that point, the market price of the underlying is also $70. It means the put option is at the money. If you have the right to sell at $70, but the market price of the asset is just $50, in that case, option is worth exercising because you will be able to sell the asset at 70, whereas the market price is 50. So in this case, the put option is in the money. And in case if you hold the put option that gives you the right to sell at 70, that the market price is $95, then why would you exercise the option? It's not worth exercising. Rather, you would sell the underlying directly in the market. So in this case, the put option would be out of money. Okay, here an investor holds a call on AAPL with the strike price of 150. If AAPL is currently trading at 156.7, is the option in the money? Absolutely. This option gives you the right to buy at 150 a stock that is currently trading at 156.7. So as long as the market price is above 150, So this is 150. As long as the price is above, the call option is in the money. If the market price is exactly 150, same as the strike price or exercise price, the call option is at the money. And if the market price is less than 150, in that case the call option is worthless. It is out of the money. Right, next. Identify the factors that determine the value of an option and explain how each factor affects the value of an option. Let us consider first the European call option. Exercise price. Exercise price is inversely proportional to the call option. Let's say if the exercise price is 50 on a stock X and if the exercise price is 70, which of these will favor me? Of course, a lower exercise price to buy. So exercise price and the value of call option, they are inversely proportional. Lower the exercise price, more valuable will be the call option. And opposite is true for put option. You can correlate. Once you see the table, you can just do the reading yourself and you will know that call and put option with regard to exercise price, they're in opposite direction. Like for example, let's say here I have two put prices here, 90 and 100. What is put option? The option that gives you the right to sell at 190. So which of these will be more beneficial for you? Of course, higher. So higher exercise price for a put option will make it more valuable. So value of put option is directly proportional to the exercise price. Then risk-free rate. How are they related? Let me explain with the common analogy. Let's say if you hold a call option, you can buy the underlying in the future date. So for that time for which you have cash, you can invest that cash and earn risk-free rate. So if the interest rate increases, it will increase the value of the call option, because that money which you have with you, instead of buying the underlying, you can deposit that money in an instrument and earn return. So that's why increase in interest rate is directly related to the value of the call option. And conversely, if you hold a put option, if the interest rates goes up, risk-free rate goes up, then you have put your money in the asset which you want to sell in the future. Thereby you are losing on what you could earn because of higher risk-free rates. So remember, risk-free rate and value of call option, they are directly proportional, because the holder of call option can generate returns. Risk-free rates, he can put the money there, whereas those who hold put option, they are giving up this higher risk-free return that they could have earned. That's why it's inversely proportional. Volatility wise, when the underlying is more volatile, it favors both the holder of call option and put option. Remember, volatility is risk. So if there is more volatility, the put and call option, they will provide you the protection. So in that case, volatility and call option and put option, they are directly proportional, directly related. So if you hold a call option and not the asset, the benefits that are receivable from the assets, you are just losing them. So it means if increase in benefits, the value of call option will fall, so they are inversely proportional. And of course, for put option, they are directly, you can correlate. Think about it and you will know. And in case of costs, since you are just holding the call option, so you are not obligated to pay the cost. So if the cost increase, that favors you because you don't hold the underlying. So thereby, when the cost increase, you are saved because you just hold the call option, not the asset. So increase of cost will benefit the call option. That's why directly proportional. But if you hold the put option, which means you have the underlying, in that case, holding cost increase would mean that the value of put option will be lowered. So it's very helpful if you could memorize this. This will help you understand the interplay of various factors that determine the value of the call or put option. Your next reading is explain put call parity for European options. What is a put call parity? As we have just discussed, values of puts and calls, they are determined from the same underlying assets. So there has to be some sort of relationship in their pricing. So let's say if you hold an asset and at the same time you purchase a put option that will give you the right to sell. So you have the asset and you have the put option. This is called protective put strategy, wherein an investor holds the underlying asset, purchases a protective put option, then at inception at the beginning, the investor commits the price of the underlying and the cost of the purchasing a put option, also called the put premium. So at that point we can say that for a protective put, the value at inception is equal to the premium put option that you paid and the value of the underlying, the cost of the underlying asset. But for another arrangement where an investor purchases a call option and at the same time he purchases a zero risk-free, zero coupon bond with the same exercise price as the call option. So if discounted at the risk-free rate till the time this call option matures, so this would give him a value which is exactly same as the protective put. This strategy where an investor enters into a fiduciary call, where an investor buys a call option here on a certain underlying and a risk-free zero coupon bond with a face value X, which is equal to the exercise price of the option. So if discounted, they will give you the same value as the protective put. So in other words, we can now say that the protective put and protective call, they should have the same payoff and they must have the same acquisition cost. Since two strategies have the same payoff, so they must have the same acquisition cost. This is called the put call parity. So we can write it this way. So they are in equilibrium here. So we can rearrange this and make C naught as our subject. So this will give us a synthetic call. And if we make P naught as our subject, this will give us a synthetic put. So an arbitrage opportunity is created when the put call parity doesn't hold. Any differential this can result in earning some gains for the investor. Let us do an example that will explain the idea of arbitrage if it exists. A European put and call option both have an exercise price of 50 that expires in 120 days. The underlying asset is priced at 52 and makes no cash payments during the life of the options. The risk-free rate is 4.5. If the put option is selling at 3.8, what should be the price of the call option? So applying the put call parity, we know C naught is equal to P naught plus S naught X upon 1 plus R raised to the power T. Plugging in the numbers, it says that the price of the put option is given as 3.8. S naught 52, that is the asset at the moment, minus 50 is the exercise price, as I said, 1 plus 4.5% raised to the power, how many days are there? 120, taking 360 as our base. If you simplify this all, you get 6.52. So the call price must be 6.52. If it isn't, then there is an arbitrage opportunity. Next is explain put call forward parity for European options. So this is just a slight modification in the previous parity equation. We know the fiduciary call consists of long call and a long position in a zero coupon bond. Long call means you have bought the call option and you hold this asset. Then we have and this protective put option, we have a long put, means we have purchased a put option, and at the same time we have long forward, we have purchased a forward contract. So combining these two, as these two portfolios have precisely the same payoff, their original investment should be the same as well. So by setting the fiduciary call equal to the synthetic protective put. We have synthesized this. That's what called synthetic protective put. So they should have the same put call parity arrangement. Thereby, we can come up with this equation. Here we have long forward, protective put, synthetic protective put. We have the long call and the long position in a zero rated coupon bond. This is what you call the put call forward parity for European options. Your next LOS explain how the value of an option is determined using a one period binomial model. So let us try to understand this directly with the help of an example. What is the value of a call option on stock if the stock price is currently at $50, the exercise price is 50, and the risk-free rate is 5%? Assume U is and D are 1.2 and 0.75 respectively. So what you do under the binomial model, you construct an arrangement like this. Up U is 1.2, down is 0.75. They will always be given to you. You don't have to be worried about U and D. Okay, now we know that the stock is currently priced at 50 and U 1.2 means that the stock could go up by a factor 1.2, which means 50 into 1.2, that will give you $60. And it may go down by a factor 0.75. In that case, 50 times 0.75, that will give you 37.5. So you hold a call option and the call option has an exercise price of 52. If the asset at the end of the period is at price at 60 and you hold the call option, that gives you the right to buy at 52. So you will definitely exercise the call option. But here you hold the call option to exercise at $52. The market price is 37.5. In this case, you won't. So here your gain would be 8 and here 0. Now this is the formula we use to calculate the value of call option. Pi plus 1 minus pi C1 negative over 1 plus R. And what is pi? Pi is equal to 1 plus R minus D upon U minus D. So we have everything we need. R is given as 5%. I hope, yes, risk-free rate is 5%. D is given as 0.75 over U minus D, that is 1.2 less 0.75. So if you simplify this, this would be given to you, all of it. It's 0.67. Right? So what you are going to do now, you're going to replace this 0.67 in the formula to calculate the value of call option, one period binomial model, times C1 plus the value of call option. In case of up, U is $8, so 0.67 times 8 plus 1 minus pi, that is 1 minus 0.67 times value of the call. In case if this U downtick, that's 0, and upon 1 plus R, that is 1 plus 5%, 1.05. So if you simplify this, this will give you 5.10. This is the value of your option using one period binomial model. That ends your LOS, basics of derivatives and derivative pricing and valuation.